Danny here. Today we're going to be looking at the middle of fall, later changed to mid-fall. We live in an age where anyone can pitch a TV show if they want. They just need to put their heart, mind, blood, sweat, and loads of money into it. Yeah, debt. Wishes don't come cheap. Well, actually, maybe they can. All it takes is the convincing of some executives, which is probably not easy because A, who are you to them? B, is their idea even good? And C, can you pitch it in a way to make it sound good? Well, I know the answer to A for me personally is nobody, but I can definitely share my B with you because hey, sharing's fun. So yeah, this isn't meant to be a pitch or anything of that sort, just thought this would be a fun topic, as there's a good bit of stuff I have to share. So I called this little story of mine Middle of Fall. One of the big things about this story is surviving. And for animals, the colder it is, the harder it gets. So I figured I'd outright state the reason in the title. Clever or lazy? It's clever. Why? Because you sure didn't know it was that blunt. Although I don't want it to be so cold that all the animals are no longer outside, or have migrated away. I need them to be in the story's environment, a small city, to make it work. Also, it being near the death season known as winter creates future problems and tension, even after the initial plot. I'll explain soon. Let's talk about mid-fall's genres. For starters, it's a fable, as in it's not realistic. Animals are the characters. They don't really talk, however. They just sort of think what they want to say out loud. If you ever seen those old Disney Channel movies with talking animals, it's kind of like that. Also like, fuck lip syncing? That's hard. Midfall is an animated adventure story. The character goes from one place to another, and back again, facing peril and danger along the way. But not without some help, however, and this fella, Bert, needs as much help as he can get. This is planned as a short film, as in a plot that has a lot of important character arcs, locations, and friends that are met and explored. It's meant to feel like the complete package, while also allowing for more situations in the future. The intended platform I'm going with this pitch was a streaming service. However, I feel that'd be pretty difficult, as most sites streaming services like Netflix release a whole season at a time, and if it doesn't reach a very high view cap, it doesn't get any more seasons. Then I think regular television, which means you have to pitch it to executives and sway them, which means you have to have swag and charm, something I don't particularly have. Really, this is what kept me from further developing this idea. I got so many others now anyway. Midfall's target demographic would be universal, as in I want anyone to be able to watch it. There will be no gore or sex, or a mix of the two as hot as that be. There's still plenty of violence and potential death. We've all seen Land Before Time, when the mother dino gets wasted in front of their kid, and it was for kids. Kids can handle murder just fine. The bare bones premise would be the story of a pet bird, who gets lost in an unknown town. They must survive with a broken wing long enough for it to heal and come back home. Does this concept sound familiar to you? Tough. Being 100% unique is nearly impossible these days. Let artists be inspired, alright? Before I can discuss more details, I feel like I should tell you about the plot, so there will be holes that can be filled in as I talk to you about other parts of this idea of mine. The story starts in the home of a pet bird's owner's house. During the day, Bert, the pet bird, is allowed to roam the house freely, when the owner is around to keep an eye on his antics. Bert doesn't particularly like being stuck in a cage the other times of the day, and gets upset when he has no choice. All is well until one day, when Bert is allowed out, and the owner goes to the garage to grab some scissors to open a bag of seed. Bert decides to fly into a book that's leaning outside of a bookshelf, and snoozes. It doesn't last long, however, and the book Bert is sleeping on shifts and falls. This causes Bert to panic and not see the other book right above him, getting struck by it and sent to the ground, becoming pinned, wing busted, and probably more internal injuries too. Bert's a mess, and the owner wasn't there to prevent this. However, the owner, shocked seeing its pet bird twisted and gnarled by the Bible, rushes him to the vet. At the vet, Bert has to stay overnight for treatment, and is told by his owner, "Bert, I'll be back in the morning." Bert, who is barely awake to get all of that, hears, "Bert, be back in the morning." This causes Bert to figure out their way out of the unsecured cage and fly or fall out the window onto the cold early morning grass. From this point, Bert meets a healthier, more well-adapted pigeon named Gil and tells them which way is home after a brief but confusing dialogue. It's not going to be easy. Bert is easy prey for those animals out there in the urban streets, and the days getting colder won't help, with only one guide in the sky to point them to their destination. Now that you know the plot and story, let me tell you about some of the conflicts we'll see throughout this journey of Bert's. Accident-prone. which causes a series of unfortunate events that leads to what starts this whole tale. And this happens again when he gets out of the unlocked cage. Accidents seem to follow Bert in the most and least opportune ways. Separation. Bert and his owner get split apart. It seems that Bert is not safe when away from his owner, as seen during the bookshelf accident. The moment Bert is away from the owner's sight, tragedy struck. Things only get more dangerous as the two are now miles apart, leaving Bert to essentially fend for themselves in an unknown world to them. Which leads to the next part, survival. As a pet bird, they've been fed, cleaned, and watched over for most of his life. And now gets none of that. He must find all of those things in a dangerous and competitive world. Not to mention, he has everything going against him. The broken wing, loss of direction, and cold nights to name a few. Oh yeah, animals. There's a couple of animals that see small birds as prey, usually for food, sometimes for fun. Bert might be seeing some of those during his travels home, seeing such predators like cats and raccoons, along with an overwhelming number of ants. Danger comes in all shapes and sizes here, but what is a show without its themes? I mean, there has to be some kind of purpose behind your show, otherwise you're just one of those artists who thrive on saying it doesn't matter. I bet people who think that way also believe calling something untitled is artsy too. Guess what, pal? If you can see that as art, then you can see themes as art. Let's start off with a more obvious one. Friendship. The bond between the owner and Bert is what drives him to run back to the owner when the chance is given. Selflessness. The friendly bird Bert meets outside the vet, named Gil, wants to help Bert for seemingly no reason other than to help out a fellow bird. Surviving. The main concern for Bert is getting home as soon as possible. The mended wing is still healing, and therefore can't be used to fly. This means that Bert has to find shelter and food during the busy days and harsh nights as he scurries home on foot, along with avoiding various predators like we talked about earlier. All this surviving will eventually lead to Bert becoming independent. Being a pet, Bert has always been provided for. The bird must now look for shelter and food of its own during the long trek home. We talked a lot about Bert, but just who is he? Let's talk about some of the major characters, starting with Bert. Bert is the main character, whom we will spend most of the time with. He loves his owner and cannot stand being away from him for too long. As the owner is Bert's comfort and protection, never having to do any sort of labor to keep itself alive at home, Bert will need to learn quickly after the accident with the bookshelf, and more foolishness at the vet. The owner, having Bert for so long, owner cared for Bert very well, and let him roam the house freely. This ended up being a mistake as the bird got into a deadly accident. The owner now intends to make their house safer for his pet bird when Bert returns from the vet. The friendly bird Gil. He helps the pet bird, Bert, find his way home after he escapes the vet, and needs directions of which way home is. While a mere Sherpa at the start, a bond forms when Bert needs help with predators when Bert eventually gets his flight back. Those are major characters taken care of, but how can you have major characters without some minors in between? Let's look at a few. The veterinarian mends to Bert's broken wing and puts him into a cage for the night. She forgets to lock the cage, which allows Bert to walk out easy enough and escape out the window. Ants overwhelm Bert when he's trying to sleep or gather food. They're just better than him at this survival thing. Raccoon. They push the bird away from the bird feeder, claiming it belongs to them. The first deadly encounter is the cat, who attacks Bert, hitting him right in the wing cast, allowing the pet bird to fly away, the wing fully healed at this point. And our final minor enemy, the hawk, who attacks Bert, now a survival expert, on the ground but not in the air. Thankfully, Gil is there to save Bert by distracting them away from him, allowing Bert to fly the rest of the way home. I swear we're nearing the end of this, but I told you little to nothing about the environment and location. I mean, where the hell is all of this happening? Well, let me explain. Owner's house. This is the safest place in what Bert calls home, even though that's where the deadly bookshelf is. Vet's building. This is where Bert got mended by the vet, and was expected to be in there for a night. That didn't happen. The healing room. This is where Bert was put. Either way, the cages there are old and faulty, and Bert easily able to escape. The town, right outside the vets. Many commercial buildings and streets are around. Very dangerous for a small bird during the day with cars roaming about. Extra deadly with ants taking all the easy food scraps on the ground. Forest. In between the town and the neighborhood where the owner lives, bird feeders are all over the place. It's a shame that they're on trees. Other wildlife such as raccoons live around here, and they're a bit more annoying to deal with than ants. The neighborhood is the final part of this journey of Bert's. The owner lives somewhere here, and Bert only saw a glimpse of it during the car ride to the vets. You'd think this place would be safe, but you got another thing coming because there are cats. Those things love birds. They love to see the birds in pieces, that is. And hawks roam about the skies too, so it's a double threat here for the final stretch. Oh man, that was a lot to drop on you all. You might be wondering, how do I envision this ending? Well, I thought about that myself too. Being a pilot, I wanted this to continue. So Bert will live. However, if Bert makes it home, then by all accounts the series would be over. So what to do to make this both satisfying and continuing? I got the answer. Bert's journey home is full of danger, starvation, and constant peril. At the start, it's rather bleak if it weren't for the kindness of strangers. Bert learns about survival by force. As his wing is still healing, he can't exactly fly away from danger, but he has to think of other ways to solve his problems. Both from predators and the environment are harsh, and only get harder as snow begins to fall. Eventually, Bert does overcome these, with trouble, but it becomes a part of him to deal with it. A too close for comfort encounter with the cat releases him from his bonds and allows him to soar again. Now he is more or less of a bird of the wild. He knows how to deal with predators, he knows how to survive the harsh cold, and he knows he's not alone, as Gil was there to help. Once Bert makes it home, he goes to the window to peck at it, but before he could do that, he sees something in his bird cage, another baby bird. How long was Bert gone for? Did the owner lose hope in finding him? This hurts, Bert. The journey was all for naught. Or was it? Bert is now fully capable of living outside the cage, and while the owner made for an excellent guardian, Bert doesn't need protection anymore. He's got friends now, and with his ability to fly, he can go pretty much anywhere, including Gil's place, which he wasn't able to do prior to his wing problem. Thus concludes the pilot and leaves the door open for more parts. And that's it. There's my unpitched pilot for a cartoon I wanted to make, but never quite did. It was mostly realized and whatnot, but I couldn't find an easy way to share this pilot to anyone that can help me push it to executives. So it stewed for a good while until I was like, screw it, and made this. I sure hope you enjoyed hearing about it. Anyway, I'm Danny Dampige. Thanks for watching.